So we know that we all fight as couples, back and forth, but we want to help you today learn how to fight better as a couple. Well, this week on the Ferguson Home, Barie and I want to share with you a few thoughts about the difference between unhealthy and healthy conflict within your marriage. I mean, every marriage has conflict, and we know we've had conflict in our relationship a few times.
Just a little.
And we know as we work with couples in our marriage ministry that every married couple has fights, they have difficulty, and they want to learn how do we have that conflict in a way that's actually healthy and builds up our relationship and doesn't tear it apart. And so today on the Ferguson Home, we want to give you 5 different principles that kind of show a contrast between unhealthy and healthy conflict.
Let's go.
All right, we'll start with the first one. It's really unhealthy in your conflict when you're using extreme language, and it's healthy in your conflict when you're using specific examples. So what do we mean by that?
I like how you started with that one because this might be my...
This is confession time for you, Barie.
Right, interesting. Yeah, I've done that oftentimes. I know...
What do we mean by extreme language?
You always do this, you never do this. Mm-hmm. I might use those words sometimes. But yeah, when it really is kind of just making you into this person, saying you're always like this. So giving you a part of your character, that I'm assigning you basically by saying that. And it puts us on the defensive. Like, wait, always? How come you haven't brought it up with me if I'm always like this?
Right.
So.
Yeah, so when you have a conflict and there's a specific thing your spouse has done that bothers you, irritates you, or whatever, and instead of saying, hey, when you did that thing, it made me feel this way, which is something your spouse can really interact over. Oh, I'm sorry that I did that made you feel this way.
Right.
When you jump to the generalizations, then it puts your spouse in the place of, well, I have to defend my character. Like, you've just made me out to be a terrible human being.
Yes.
And now I have to respond to that instead of the specific thing.
So you miss what's actually the issue. And I think this happens too when someone, one of the husband or the wife is carrying offenses. Like if they're not letting go and truly forgiving after an offense, then they carry it and they're just
so things build up,
keeping that deposit in there to where then when there's an explosion, they do think it's always because they've had these other things that they've just let the root of bitterness build and build and build until it's flat.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, give us another one.
Yeah, the other one is when you assign motive for actions that your spouse has done, and you assign motive to them why they did that versus choosing to believe the best in them. So you have an example for that?
Well, just, let's say that your spouse forgot to do something, they forgot to call you back, and instead of believing the best that they got busy and you understand why they forgot to call you back, you assign this motive to them, which is that they intended to hurt you or they were intentionally trying to avoid you or whatever, right? And so it's the same behavior, like something specific has happened, but then in your state of being hurt, and we all do this, you kind of assume the worst. Like, this is why you did that to me. It's because you don't care about me, you don't love me, you jumped all these things instead of saying, okay, I'm going to believe the best about your intention, but I'm still going to speak to the specific thing you did that hurt me.
Yeah, for us, a specific example, I'm thinking of, this can involve money. So, and I don't know if I have a specific one on hand, but like, you say no to us doing something, and I could assign motive that he's just a cheapskate, or I don't think that, but he never wants to spend money and he doesn't ever want to have any fun, and I can assign these like motives to why he's doing stuff. He just is a hoarder or whatever, when really he's trying to make sure that our family is not in debt and suffering from the stress of that, where he knows, hey, there's something else coming up that we need to save for, and I'm not thinking about that. And I should be really thankful that he's got the long-term view, but instead I choose to just assign motive on why in that moment he's not giving in to what I want then.
That's good. That's a good illustration. Yeah, another example of unhealthy conflict is when you're avoiding conflict. Versus healthy conflict is when you're having open and honest disagreement. And so this is a little bit dependent on your temperament and your personality. Some people are just conflict avoiders. It's like they would rather do anything than have a hard conversation, even with their spouse. And so we know a lot of people, work with a lot of couples where we kind of use the metaphor sweeping it under the rug, which basically means something is bothering me in the relationship, but the pain of the conflict is higher than the pain of whatever I'm struggling with. And so I'm going to sweep it under the rug and not deal with it. And that creates a lot of problems because, like Barie said, what happens is that sweeping under the rug builds and builds and builds and builds, and you're avoiding until you get to that place where instead of it being a simple conflict over one situation, it becomes an explosion over 10 things that should have been dealt with. And so the healthy side of that is open and honest disagreement. And you were saying this earlier today that you think every marriage has got some level of disagreement. They just need to be honest about it.
Yeah, you're not the same person. So you're going to think differently about pretty much everything in life, you know? And if you don't, well, that's kind of boring. So you both have both of what you think, for both of you, there's value to that. And you need to play off that strength of having each other and having two different thoughts about different things and figure out a solution based on those, together. The next one kind of goes along with this, and that is being very argumentative versus overlooking offenses. And I would say, or overlooking issues. And I would say if you tend to where we never fight, we don't even need to watch this on Fighting Better because we never fight. I would challenge you that I actually think that reveals that one of you is passive. Maybe both of you, but for sure
somebody's just kind of giving in all the time and whatever you want.
Because
and that's not healthy.
It's not healthy. And at some point, the person who's being passive will realize what's been going on and they will blame their spouse. So you're to blame too. If you've been passive that whole time and you have not shared your opinion, then you forgot that you're made in the image of the Lord and that He has given you a mind and a brain and thoughts also.
But the flip side of that is the couple that has no conflict, we want to say, hey, be careful because there may be passivity. But there's also the couple that has conflict about everything. Like every issue, every meal, every piece of clothing, every time decision, scheduling decision becomes this massive fight. And so we want to challenge you, that's not healthy either. That tends to reveal an argumentative spirit, which is like, I'm not going to let anybody tell me what to do or be in control. I'm going to be in control of every situation. And there just be some underlying heart issues you need to deal with. So just watch out for the argumentative spirit. And I think sometimes what you say is, you got to choose wisely the things you're going to have conflict over. Some things you just need to let go. Like they're not that big a deal.
Yeah, the Bible says hate what is evil, not hate what aggravates you.
Yeah, hate what's annoying.
And so we see that with our kids all the time, and it drives me crazy because I'm telling you, one sibling can't eat an apple without the other one acting like it's the worst offense in the world. Well, it's just bothering you, but it's not like a sin of his the way he eats. And so I think for those things that you just need to remember, is this really something that God's called me to be angry about? Is this a sin issue, or is this just something that bothers me that I need to just let go? Yeah.
The scripture that comes to my mind is the one that says, as much as it's up to you, live at peace with all people. And so I think what I love about that passage is the acknowledgement, you can't control what your spouse does, you can't control what your kids do, but you yourself can be at peace toward others. And so that's the whole point of if you have an argumentative spirit, there's something going on in you that you need to deal with the Lord with so that you can be at peace. And then the way you relate to other people.
Well, and it goes back to believing the best about your spouse. If you're arguing with them about everything, you don't believe the best in them and that their heart is for you. You're assuming that you're like opponents instead of that you're on the same team. I was looking up, I love the verse that we have above our pantry, and it's Ephesians 4:2. It says, always be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. And I think that's a great verse. So it's Ephesians 4:2, to put that up in your home and to practice that we're making allowance for each other because of our love for each other.
That's really good. The last thing we want to share with you about unhealthy versus healthy conflict is unhealthy conflict is unresolved. I mean, it just lingers. You don't ever really get to a resolution on it. And so it keeps coming up. Like we're having the same fight day after day after day, month after month, versus healthy conflict gets to resolution. Like it gets to a place of peace, to a place of apology and forgiveness, and really being reconciled to each other. And so I think what Barie and I would say to you is, if you're fighting with each other but it's never resolved, that's a problem. Like, it's okay to fight, you're going to have conflict, you're going to have disagreement, but you need to work it out together, getting to a place of resolution so that that fight is over, like it stops.
Yeah, and I would say one of the main key points that we teach in Reengage is a concept called stay in your circle. And so to fight better means to stay in your circle as you are fighting.
Yeah, what does that mean? Explain that again. Stay in your circle.
I think it goes back to kind of all this of not focusing on what your spouse has done wrong. Because that's out of your circle. Like, you can control what's in the circle and making that healthy, but you can't control what's out of your circle. And I think oftentimes we try to just jump over our circle all the time and jump in the other one, and that's not our place. And so, yeah, you're looking for a specific example?
No, I was just curious, because this may be the first time they've heard that phrase, stay in your circle, and you should be taking responsibility for yourself and not assuming responsibility for somebody else.
Yeah, like if you're coming to your spouse and they've really hurt you, instead of using the extreme language or assigning motive at the beginning, you start out with you in your circle. Hey, babe, I'm really struggling and I'm really carrying around this wound from when we had this conversation, and this is how I took it. This is how I interpreted it. Can you help me understand better?
Yeah.
Is that a good example?
Yeah, that's great.
So then you allow your husband or your wife to, in their circle, say, well, when that happened, this is what I was doing, this is what I meant, and then believe the best, you know? And then you just practice that back and forth, but you don't just jump into their circle like, you need to fix this, you're always doing this wrong, or because, you know.
Yeah.
Not helpful.
So, Barie, I wanted to say to you today, fights are going to happen, conflict's going to happen, but you can do it in a way that's healthy and actually produces more oneness in your relationship, or you can do it in an unhealthy way that drives you apart from each other. And our prayer for you is that you would fight better in a healthier way so that you would be reconciled to each other at the end of the day.